This is a story about Jamal Khashoggi. We're going to go through what happened. We're going to go through his entire life because I've seen almost no media go through it, and it's incredibly interesting. Then we're going to talk about Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Trump's response. I got it all here, 6 pages of notes. So the big story that's been in the media for a month, I've waited to touch on it because I really wanted to be correct about it before I weighed in on it. Jamal Khashoggi was a journalist. I believe he was working for the Washington Post, possibly others, but he's a lifelong journalist. Among other things we're going to learn. But he entered the Saudi Arabian consulate in Istanbul, Turkey, in order to obtain documents related to his planned marriage. So Jamal Khashoggi, a journalist, planned to get married, and he wanted to go to the Saudi Arabia consulate, according to mainstream stories, to get his documents so he could get married. And when he went there, he disappeared. And for a week or 2 weeks, Saudi Arabia was like, oh no, he left the consulate, trust me. So they kind of got caught lying a little bit. I don't know who it was from Saudi Arabia, but they're like, no, he left. And they found out that he ended up getting dismembered and he was murdered. So a week and a half later, even the Saudi Arabian Attorney General admitted that it was premeditated murder. He was killed, and 18 Saudis were arrested. So he went into the Saudi Arabian consulate in Istanbul to get married and got murdered. Not good. It's never good. And he planned on marrying a 36-year-old PhD candidate of the University of Istanbul. So on that note, before I want to get into it, because, with Saudi Arabia, yeah, there are allies or whatever, but I just want to remind people that 15 of the 19 9/11 attackers were Saudi Arabian citizens. So that was one of the worst attacks on U.S. soil. And there were 15 of 19 of them were Saudi Arabian citizens. I remember during the Obama administration, people lobbied to sue Saudi Arabia, like 9/11 victims and families. It passed through, and Obama was like, nah, that's not a good idea. Just like Trump says it's not a good idea, because Saudi Arabia has us by the balls pretty much. I mean, whether it be financially or military-industrial complex-wise, they must have us by the balls, because no matter what they do, our presidents never really hold them accountable for virtually everything. We're gonna get into Saudi Arabia and Turkey and all the sketchy stuff that they're doing. But first, I want to go into the life of Jamal Khashoggi. Yes, he got murdered, but he has a very interesting life tale, and nobody really covered it. I'm gonna go from top to bottom. So he was born as the nephew of a high-profile Saudi Arabian arms dealer named Adnan Khashoggi, or Adran Khashoggi. I can't read my handwriting. But he's the nephew of high-profile Saudi Arabian arms dealer known for his part in the Iran-Contra scandal. So a lot of news isn't covering that, but he's the nephew of one of the most high-profile Saudi Arabian arms dealers of all times, involved in the Iran-Contra scandal, and had a net worth roughly, I don't know, allegedly, that's what they say so they don't get sued, but reports said he had a net worth of $4 billion in the 1980s. So this dude was loaded. That was his uncle, I guess, right, if he's the nephew. So also, Khashoggi's first cousin was Dadi Fayed, who was dating Princess Diana of Wales when the two were killed in a car crash in Paris. So it's another big fact that, he's got a wild past. He's got the nephew of a Saudi Arabian arms dealer. First cousin was the guy who got killed with Princess Diana in the car crash. Some stuff that I didn't hear. I was like, this guy's really in the mix, man. So in his professional life, he started working for some Saudi newspapers. So he was a journalist, and he started working, journalism, blah, 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 cool. Got more interesting. There were claims that he worked for Saudi Arabian intelligence agencies from 1991 to 1999 in that area roughly, and possibly even worked with the United States in Afghanistan. So this guy is very familiar with Saudi Arabia, reports that he worked with intelligence directly during the 90s and with U.S. and Afghanistan. Why do they think that he worked with Saudi Arabia and the United States? It's because he was very, very tight with Osama bin Laden. That's right, you guessed it, folks. Jamal Khashoggi seemed like he had a really great relationship with Osama bin Laden, and during the 80s and 90s was highly acquainted with him. He did several interviews, I believe 3 or 4 interviews with Osama bin Laden when bin Laden was championing the jihad against the Soviets. And this is coming directly from the Washington Post, because people will say, oh, Anomaly is a conspiracy theorist. He's just making stuff up. I mean, this is all on Wikipedia, but also this comes straight from Washington Post columnist David Ignatius. He said, Khashoggi couldn't have traveled with the Mujahideen that way. I'm sorry, I emphasized the wrong word. Khashoggi couldn't have traveled with the Mujahideen that way without tacit support from Saudi intelligence and possibly, and I'm closing quote there, and possibly the United States and the CIA against the Soviet Union in Afghanistan. So that's the Washington Post hinting that he was working directly with the CIA and Saudi intelligence, working with Osama bin Laden in the whole like Mujahideen, CIA, I don't know what was going on in the 90s, but you can research that yourself. So, I mean, you would think you would hear stuff like this in the news from conservatives or Democrats, but you really don't. I haven't heard anything about this. But as you guys know, Osama bin Laden went on to do the 9/11 attacks, and apparently, allegedly, accordingly, Khashoggi wasn't a part of that. He said that bin Laden got radicalized in 1997, and he disavowed that completely. Once again, I'm going to remind you that 15 of 19 9/11 attackers were Saudi Arabian citizens. That's just a fact. So move forward to 2018. Who is Khashoggi in the modern era? He worked for the Washington Post. He was a reporter, and he had a lot of anti-Saudi Arabia content. He was anti-Wahhabist. Wahhabism is a, I guess, offshoot of Islam, or one of the ideologies of Islam. Many people, including Rand Paul and Tulsi Gabbard on the right and the left, say that Wahhabism is the #1 source of terrorism in the Middle East. I don't know about that. I don't live in the Middle East. I can't pinpoint it to let you know. I just know it's insane over there. But that is a very popular opinion. Jamal Khashoggi's, it's shared left and right, Tulsi Gabbard, Rand Paul, many others. He was all for secularism in Islam. He was calling for, Saudi Arabia to modernize a little bit. He said that the Arab world needed free expression. He also criticized Saudi Arabia about virtually everything they were doing. He criticized them about the blockade against Qatar or Yemen. I'm not sure, maybe both. Saudi Arabia dispute with Lebanon. Saudi Arabia dispute with Canada. He criticized Israel's settlement buildings in Palestine. So he was a big critic of Israel and Saudi Arabia in the Washington Post. And we know I know, at least with Saudi Arabia, it doesn't seem like they treat people like we would want to be treated in the United States. Women just got the right to drive. I think they still need like a supervisor or something. Women don't have rights, to put it quite frankly. A lot of people don't have rights. I mean, the United States is much more free than Saudi Arabia. So being a huge critic of Saudi Arabia, it is a risk. I'm not saying not to do it, but if you're Saudi Arabian and you're working for the Washington Post and then you're going into the consulate, I'm not saying they should have killed him, but he was a huge critic of that, and we all know how wild it is over there. So what makes this story even weirder is that after all this started going on, I noticed personally that Turkey's president or leader, I don't know if they call him the president, Erdogan, it's spelled Ergodan, me being me, I always say Ergodan, but I believe it's pronounced Erdogan. He starts writing Washington Post op-eds in the Washington Post, which is weird to me because I'm not saying that they should have killed Khashoggi. Obviously, they shouldn't have, and I don't think it's right at all. But to let the leader of Turkey start writing op-eds in the Washington Post is a little bit sketchy. It's a little bit of a red flag to me because I remember a year ago that the leader of Turkey, Erdogan, called for migrants to basically flood Europe. He was basically like, if I don't get my way with these European deals, I'm going to flood all of Europe with my migrants. And I bring this up all the time because people are like, travel ban? That's so silly. You think there's going to be refugees? I don't think so. I know so, because leaders from countries like Iran and countries like Turkey, they literally threaten their people like, oh, you think you're going to get one over on me? Well, watch me flood your entire continent with migrants. They openly admit that they're using their people as weapons, so it's not like a conspiracy theory or a Trumpism. It's like a blatant fact that people ignore all the time. And it's just strange that he's writing for the Washington Post now. It's like, I don't think they should have killed Khashoggi. This is me personally. I think they murdered him, and it's totally wrong. But also, I'm like, why was this guy working with bin Laden? He was working with the CIA. He was working with the Saudi intelligence back in the day. And me personally, I'm just, this is my personal belief, is that the Washington Post and the New York Times are mostly run by like old CIA members or like Obama holdovers, George Bush type holdovers who don't like President Trump. Because every time there's an anti-Trump story with little to no evidence, they say, ooh, the CIA reported on this, and, Trump's going against the intelligence communities. It's all coming out of the Washington Post. So if a guy from Washington Post said that Khashoggi was working for the CIA and Saudi intelligence in the 90s, I'm not totally convinced that he wasn't currently working for the CIA and writing for the Washington Post. Once again, I have no claims to back that up, just basic, 2 eyes and researching what's been going on. That's my personal theory and thought. And, there's like an internal conflict where the CIA, or at least people in it, I'm not saying the whole agency, a lot of them don't like Trump. They don't want Trump to be the leader. That's why they changed the Washington Post title to Democracy Dies in Darkness. It's because they lost power and they want to regain power from President Trump. Similar to Saudi Arabia, they're very unhappy with Saudi Arabia. I'm going to be honest, I'm not happy with Saudi Arabia. I don't trust them even remotely. I'm going to get into that later. But it's like there's a lot of power struggles going on. It's like it's not like black and white. It's not like Trump bad, CIA good, or like Jamal Khashoggi amazing and them bad. I'm not saying he wasn't amazing, but when you have Trump and you have like Washington Post and you have this people in the CIA who don't agree with him, and then you have Saudi Arabia, and then you have Turkey, and then you have Israel, and then you have Iran. There's like a huge, creepy, crazy power struggle that's going on that nobody asked for. It's kind of like you live in a city, you don't want crime, but it's in every big city. It's like you don't get the city without crime. Unfortunately, we don't have a world now without all these creepy, crazy like beefs and stuff. So anyway, all that being said, my takeaway before I go on to what Trump said, my takeaway is Khashoggi shouldn't have been murdered. Personally, I think he was working, for some people. I don't think he was just a random journalist. They were heavily critical of Saudis. God knows what the Saudis are doing because they clearly weren't stopping 9/11 terrorists from blowing up our Twin Towers. I don't trust Saudi Arabia. I don't know that anyone does, but they make a lot of money, and we're pretty much tied to the petrodollar as far as my knowledge. So our whole, unfortunately, economy and world runs on oil money. So Saudi Arabia being the highest producer of oil besides the United States, they have a lot of power, and clearly that matters to people more than, other things. And let me get into what Trump said, because I could talk about this for a second, but I just want to stick to the facts, because I put in a little opinions there and like side notes, but let me know your thoughts, because I have no idea what's going on in the Middle East, and I'm not afraid to admit that. A lot of people, here's what I'd do if I was President Trump, I'd do this. Like, yeah, cool, it sounds great from your couch, but it's a lot easier to say, they're bad, they're good, I would do this. It's not that easy, and no world leader is going to have an easy time with this, but here's what Trump said. So Trump starts off his little like White House thing. It looks like a meme. I thought it was a joke, but it wasn't. You know how Trump, he's so blunt and simple that it almost seems silly. But he started and said, "America first, the world is a dangerous place." So I'm looking at this, if you guys saw it, you're like saying White House official document, and it's like, "America first, the world is a dangerous place." And you're like, Jesus Christ. Not to use his name in vain, but you know what I'm saying. I was like, oh my goodness, what's going on in this planet? But he gets into it and he says he immediately blames Iran. This is President Trump. He blames Iran for the proxy war in Yemen. He blames Iran for Hezbollah in Lebanon. He also blames Iran for propping up the dictator Bashar al-Assad. And I don't agree with this wording, but I don't want to get too opinionated about it. But so he's immediately blaming Iran for all those things. He also said, Iran states openly death to America and death to Israel. That I think is true. I've seen the videos of it. So he talked about that. He also said Saudi would withdraw from Yemen if the Iranians leave. And this is a whole new thing that I didn't even know. And it's weird because I think him and Mattis are beefing over this because Mattis wants to retreat from Yemen, which I thought sounded good, like stop killing innocent civilians. Always sounds good to me. But, and he also said that in an interview that he thinks Mattis is a Democrat, so him and General Mattis don't seem like they're getting along on this. But Trump said something new to me. I'm not saying it's not true or it is true. I'm just saying he said it and I've never heard it before. He said Saudi would withdraw from Yemen if the Iranians leave. It's a possibility. I'm not throwing it out the window. He also said Saudi Arabia has spent billions fighting radical Islamic terrorism. I'm not so sure I'm on board with that, to be honest. I don't know that maybe they have. Maybe they're really fighting radical Islamic terrorism. I just don't see it, but that's what President Trump said. He also said we made $450 billion in weapon sales. So this is really the meat of the argument why we want to stay allies with Saudi Arabia, among a few other things, is we just sold $450 billion of weapon sales to Saudi Arabia. So not only do we do oil transactions with them, we sell more weapons to Saudi Arabia than we do to anyone in the world. And a lot of people on the left and the right has been very critical of the Trump administration and the Obama administration because we sell weapons to Saudi Arabia and then they get used in war on Yemen, which a lot of people say is killing civilians. And also in the war on terror, it's like, we're selling weapons to Saudi Arabia, and then you read articles in mainstream media, and it's like both sides of the war are being funded, and terrorist organizations are driving United States cars, and they're shooting United States weapons. So someone's lying. Something's going on. I'm not saying who's lying or what's going on, but yeah, like Trump said, we sell $450 billion of weapon sales to Saudi Arabia. That's what he did during his administration. And he's saying jobs, jobs, jobs. Yeah, for sure. Creates a lot of jobs. I'm sure it does. He said Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon. I think a lot of pro-war people will probably say, yeah, that's a lot of jobs. Hooray, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and Raytheon. And a lot of anti-war people on the right and the left would say, we're not big fans of Lockheed Martin and Raytheon or Boeing, but they make airplanes too, so you can't hate too hard because you want your airplane to work. Anyway, Trump also then said the crime against Khashoggi was a terrible one that we don't condone. So he's letting you know, I want to do business with Saudi Arabia. I don't trust Iran, but we don't condone this terrible crime. He also then said something a little weird. I'll get to it at the end, but he said Saudi Arabia claims that Khashoggi was an enemy of the state working with Muslim Brotherhood, but Trump said that my decision is not based on that fact. I can see how the liberal media will really nitpick at this because Trump calls the mainstream media in America the enemy of the people. It's hard for me to disagree. I think they lie about almost everything, start wars and confuse and make people depressed and angry. So I do see where he comes from. But if he calls them the enemy of the people, and then he's saying Saudi Arabia is justifying this crime by calling them the enemy of the state, it's probably not the best choice of words for a presidential statement, just to be honest. But, to each their own. I'm not the president. He is. So, I can't hate on that. But that's just my personal take on that. And I know that liberal media will chop into it. Going down further in the presidential statement, this is all, roughly from Trump. You can read it yourself. He said that the Crown Prince Salman of Saudi Arabia denies that this happened. But then Trump said that our intelligence communities are continuing to assess that. And this is a direct quote I'm going to give you here. He said, maybe he did and maybe he didn't. It's weird because, one of the best things about Trump is that he speaks so simply to people. People think it's dumb, but it's actually genius. It's keep it simple so anyone can understand it. It's you're not just talking to liberal scholars with 20 PhDs. You're talking to all of America and people who don't even speak English. So the simpler you keep it, it actually makes sense. So in that way, Trump's a genius. But also, it's the best and worst thing about him. He just says, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. It ticks a lot of people off. I usually think it's funny, but when you're talking about people getting murdered and, wars and stuff, it's not as humorous, can't lie. So overall, he also said in his presidential statement, he understands that members of Congress want to go in a different direction. And this is a direct quote. He said, I will consider whatever ideas are presented to me, but only if they are consistent with the absolute security and safety of America. This is something I really like about President Trump. He seems pragmatic. He says, I know people aren't going to agree, and I'll consider what you say, but it's got to keep America safe and secure. He said after U.S., Saudi Arabia is the largest oil-producing nation in the world. We know that. I said that earlier, but yeah, that's a big reason. He said we work closely with Saudi Arabia to keep oil prices low. He reiterated it's a very dangerous world, that we're pursuing national interests, and we're working against countries that wish to do us harm. And he ended with America first. So I'll tell you all angles. There's some people who agree with Trump and they say, you know, trust the plan. He's the president. He knows what he's doing. There's critics like Rand Paul, who's like super anti-war, which is funny because like I'm just gonna make a side note. Liberals and like people that get mad at me over stuff, they hate Rand Paul, but Rand Paul's like super anti-war. But it's like, why do you not like Rand Paul? Like, it's like when people don't like Tucker Carlson. I'm like, why do you not like Tucker Carlson? He's like anti-war. He agrees with you, but people still hate him. Anyway, Rand Paul said this note sounded like John Bolton wrote it. That's Rand Paul's criticism. And I also want to say, I'm going to explore both sides. So I know if people are super pro-Trump, they're going to get mad. But just hear me out. This is like half the Republican base, maybe more, maybe less. They're very anti-war, and they're skeptical of Saudi Arabia, as everyone should be after 9/11 and all this stuff. And a lot of people are, you know, feel a little uneasy about it. And one of those is one of his biggest allies, Rand Paul. Tulsi Gabbard, many more, but I wouldn't say they're really good allies to him. But Rand Paul is, and I think he's a friend. I'm torn on it. I'm not totally in the Rand Paul lane. I'm very, very pragmatic. And here's my official takedown. You could have yours. The world is a dangerous place. I agree with Trump. I don't trust Saudi Arabia, and I don't know that they're fighting radical Islamic terrorism, because you could look at their own country, and don't get me wrong, I have friends in Saudi Arabia that I went to college to. I went to college with some Saudi Arabian kids who are now adults, and they're very, very cool, very nice people, very soulful, good people. But they came to the United States and they told me, like, the culture's totally different there. People are not as nice. Women don't have rights. Like, they're not them, Iran. Like, women can't really do things women can do here. So I'm not saying they're murdering people in the streets, but clearly Saudi Arabia is murdering someone. And I don't know how hard they're fighting radical Islamic terrorism when that ideology that they have is pretty radical on liberal Western standards. So I don't trust them. However, I'm not like a super I'm not the person that's like, F Trump, you know, I hate Trump now. I don't agree with him because he feels this way. It's easy to be me or you or a liberal or anti-war person and say that from your couch or from your cell phone. But when you're in the president of the United States, here's some things that are very real. Iran, I'll tell you right now, Iran hates the United States. I had an Iranian Uber driver who said he can't see his father because of the travel ban. I was thinking he was going to hate on Trump, but he said, listen to me, I can't see my father because of the travel ban, but I want you to know one thing. And he turned to me and he said, Trump is 100% right about Iran. He said there's terrorists in Iran, there's bad people in Iran. Of course, there's a lot of great people in Iran, but he said Trump's right. Iran, a lot of people there hate the United States, and he's right to do the travel ban. That changed my perspective totally, because the guy literally just got from Iran. So it's like there are people who chant death to Israel and death to the United States in Iran. So yes, I agree with Trump that Iran does hate us. I don't trust Turkey personally. I've seen the leader of Turkey say he wants to flood Europe with migrants. So that doesn't sound non-radical to me. I don't trust Turkey since I know they, committed the Armenian genocide. I don't know that they've ever taken responsibility for that, where millions of Christians were murdered ruthlessly for being Christian, and Armenians were murdered by Turkey's regime. It was in the early 1900s. But not only have I not heard them take credit for that, a lot of their tactics seem very similar to what's happening now. They rounded up the intellectuals, murdered them first, murdered everyone else. Also, I want to note that the Young Turks is the biggest progressive and the biggest, this is just how twisted the world is, I'll tell you right now. The Young Turks is the biggest news station on the internet, on YouTube. The Young Turks is named after the Young Turks, who were the perpetrators of the Armenian genocide, who slaughtered a bunch of Armenian Christians. It's like naming your news network the Young Nazis and no one having a problem with it. It's like Fox News or like Breitbart being the Young Nazis and everyone's totally okay with it. This is the stuff, I'm not trying to get polarizing or get political now, but this is the stuff that you're not getting away with on the right, and this is the stuff you can only get away with if you're on the left. Their name is the Young Turks. The Young Turks started the Armenian genocide. The leader of the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, I mean, he denies it. He's like, oh, I don't know about that. He claims he doesn't, but it's insane to me that there's a news network that's the biggest progressive news network named the Young Turks. I don't trust Turkey. I don't trust their leader. I don't trust the Young Turks, both the murderers and the news network. I don't trust Saudi Arabia. I don't trust Iran. To be honest, I'm sure Israel's a nice place to go. I have a lot of Jewish supporters, and I know I have people from Israel, but I don't trust the leadership of Israel over the last 12 years. I don't trust the leadership of the United States over the last 12 years. It doesn't mean I hate Israel or the United States or Iran or Turkey. I know people who live in all of the places, and they're all great. I just don't trust the leadership of any country. I didn't trust George Bush. I don't trust the CIA and the FBI based on what they've done. You know, there's reports that the CIA sold a lot of the drugs to people on the streets, and you know, there's unclaimed, I'll say, you know, allegedly, because who knows. The FBI wrote a suicide letter to Martin Luther King. This is mainstream knowledge. You can go on Vox or Washington Post or CNN or Wikipedia and find out that the FBI told Martin Luther King to kill himself. They wrote a letter and was like, yo, bro, kill yourself. So that's just mainstream news. I mean, so I don't really trust anybody involved in this situation. So I don't think Trump is perfect. I don't know that I trust John Bolton, but I do think that there's going to be people on both sides. There's going to be the Trump fanatics who just say, no, it's perfect, and I don't agree with that. But I'm not gonna jump off the bandwagon. Like, people are gonna be like, oh, are you still supporting Trump, or because he did that to Saudi Arabia? Trump didn't do this to Saudi Arabia. Trump didn't kill Jamal Khashoggi. Trump's not best friends with Saudi Arabia. Trump's not in on like all the stuff they do to their citizens. They murder people all the time, and they literally don't let their women drive or do anything. So it's like, do you think Trump did that? Trump didn't make Saudi Arabia Saudi Arabia. He's like a guy who probably wanted to do a few things and inherited a huge problem in the world that nobody asked for. It's like a big city. If you're the mayor of a big city, you don't want any crime, but you can't eliminate crime completely. I wish you could. I wish every big city in the world had 0% crime rate, but that's just not the case. It's usually the opposite. Same with Trump in the world. Like, the easy thing is to say, oh, Trump shouldn't have done that, but say you break relations with Saudi Arabia. I'm also, just to be honest, I'm not convinced 100% on the story. Something about the story is sketchy. The fact he used to work for Saudi Arabian intelligence, the fact he potentially worked for the CIA, the fact that he was writing for the Washington Post, the fact that Turkey is propagating this and now the leader of Turkey is getting op-eds in the Washington Post. A lot of this stuff isn't adding up. So I do, on that note, I like Trump. I know probably some people are going to get mad at me, but I don't really care. This is how I feel. I like Trump's approach of like waiting to see what happens. Like, anytime they do something, this is like I'm not saying this happened here, but I'm just throwing it out there. They throw emotions at you, they throw a big crisis at you, and they try to direct the trajectory of what you're doing based on all of that stuff. For an example, in North Korea, they don't want Trump to get along with North Korea. They never wanted him to have a relationship with Kim Jong-un. So beforehand, they say, they're going to nuke you, it's bad, you got to stop the nukes. So that's the problem. And then when you solve the problem, Trump solves the problem and says, okay, I'm going to get good relations with North Korea. Now they throw another problem at you, and they say, well, now you're a dictator because you're getting along with dictators. So now it's a lose-lose, no matter what he does. And then they say they're still building bombs. So every which way, no matter what Trump does, they're trying to get him to start a war with North Korea. They did it 20 different ways. They don't want Trump to get along with North Korea. They don't want the United States to get along with North Korea. I don't know why. I don't know if it's political reasons, they have investments there or something, or they simply just don't like Trump and want to make him look bad to gain power. Either way, I know that they do that. So when it comes to Saudi Arabia, there's some people that think that the new crown king is actually less corrupt than old ones. I'm not saying he is, but there's a lot of people that think this leader is actually weeding out the corruption, and a lot of reports back that up. Like I said, I'm not saying it's true or false, I'm just giving you all angles. This crown king put a lot of other people in jail, like a lot of very wealthy Saudi Arabians. The liberal side or the left that hates Trump will say, oh, he's a dictator, arresting a bunch of people in his own country. He's a fascist. That's the same thing they would say if Trump arrested Obama, Hillary, and George Bush, like for war crimes. They wouldn't say, oh, hooray, we got rid of people who've done bad things. They would say, Trump's a fascist, so he can't win. Either he drains the swamp and people call him a fascist, or he doesn't drain the swamp, nothing gets done, people complain about that, and they still call him a fascist. Same with Saudi Arabia. I don't know what's happening, but it does seem like he might be a leader who's not quite as bad as the other leaders. And if that is the case, I don't put it past whoever the Trump resistance is worldwide to try to stage something like this to guilt Trump into turning against Saudi Arabia. I think that's a huge possibility. And once again, I'm going to repeat it 20 times so people can't misconstrue me. I'm not saying I trust Saudi Arabia. Obviously, from 9/11 to now, there's 10 million things to not trust about them. But I don't put it past other people. When there's gaps to take advantage of people, when people know this, they will do things. It's similar to social justice. When people know they can use women and children and a story about the border or a story about race to push an agenda and use that and say, if you disagree with me, you're racist. If you disagree with me, you're sexist. If Trump disagrees with this, he's a murderer and he wants to murder journalists. This is a very easy way to manipulate Trump and manipulate anyone into following the agenda. And trust me, regardless, I'm not saying this one is or isn't that, but they do this with virtually everything that Trump does. They don't want him to break away from deals they had with the EU or the UN. They don't want UK to do Brexit, even though they voted on it. They don't want that to happen. They don't want Italy to leave. They don't want Poland to leave. They don't want Sweden to free themselves. They don't want anyone to do anything. They want total and complete control. And the problem is, and I'm not even talking about Saudi Arabia or Turkey, but in the United States, in many parts of Europe, now in parts of South America, these people who continuously had control over virtually everything and constantly got their way, either by force or by media manipulation, now all they have is media manipulation because their jig kind of got, the jig is up a little bit. People are catching on. They're not getting away with just invading countries anymore. It's not that easy to do. So with that being said, all they have is media manipulation, and it's very powerful. As Malcolm X said, if you control the media, you control the minds of the masses. You can make the guilty look innocent, innocent look guilty. You could flip any situation on its head and force people in that direction. On that note, that's one of the angles. I think that the anti-Trump resistance are trying to set him up against Saudi Arabia. But on the same note, I can't say that I agree with like half of what Trump said. I think Iran's a total problem for sure. I think they hate the U.S., Hezbollah, yeah, for sure, all that stuff. But I don't like how he called Bashir al-Assad a dictator. I don't agree with that. Because personally, I don't think we should have ever invaded Syria. But, I get it. Like, Russia's in there. Iran is in there. Unfortunately, it's the same story on loop. Like, history repeats itself. I just told you about Khashoggi and his involvement with the CIA, possibly. And, Saudi intelligence fighting, Soviet Union. This was in the 80s and 90s. Flip to 30 years, what's going on? It's the Saudis and the United States linking up to fight the modern Russia, which is old Soviet Union, in Syria. It's like 30 years and nothing's changed. It's proxy war on proxy war. Russia, China, Iran, Saudi Arabia. Like, I don't know the answer. So, the purist and the person who is honestly more dishonest than me and more egotistical will tell you, Trump should do this with Saudi Arabia. Trump should do this with Iran. It sounds very good, but they're not weighing out all sides. Say Trump completely didn't deal with Saudi Arabia and completely left the Middle East and lowered our military budget. We would probably get fried in a second because Turkey hates us. Iran hates us. Saudi Arabia doesn't even like us. I just think they want money. I don't think Saudi likes us the slightest bit. Terrorist organizations don't like us that are now being weeded out. Russia doesn't really like us. No one really likes the United States. No one wants. It's like if you're dirt poor, and you're looking at some guy who's a billionaire who just walks around and meddles in everybody else's stuff all the time. No one sits there and thinks, oh yeah, I want him to be the king, and I just want to be the guy who kind of does okay, and my people do all right, and we got a decent economy and our military's all right, but like we're not like the United States. No one wants the US to be. It's like when you succeed personally, no one wants you to be better than them. That's just like, yeah, congratulate, but like secretly everyone's like, well, I want to be better than that. So no one really likes the United States. Like, yeah, we're cool. Japan loves us. They wear Adidas and listen to rap music, and like Europe's obsessed with Hollywood, and people like us. They like our culture, our movies, and our music, and they like our help and our money and our military. But I don't know that any country really wants the United States to be the king of the land and them to be second or third or fourth fiddle. So I don't agree with war purists, to be honest. I don't agree, oh yeah, cut the military budget, leave Saudi Arabia alone, leave Afghanistan and Syria, and the world will be peaceful. No, of course it won't be peaceful. I mean, it's like a multi-layered puzzle. I know that you do have to lead by example, but so far, Trump is not perfect. I don't agree with like a lot of his wordings in what he said and how he chose to say it. I would never say that, but I'm overall happy with what he's done so far. I'm impressed. What he did in Syria, a lot of people won't say, did he leave Syria alone? No. Did he not call Bashar al-Assad a dictator? No, he did call Bashar al-Assad a dictator. I don't agree with that. But what he did do is he overturned $1 billion CIA operation in Syria to stop funding rebels. So a large reason that ISIS, the terrorist organization we claim to be fighting for 10 years, but I personally don't think we were fighting them if we were literally, I mean, nothing about it makes sense. Oh yeah, like Bin Laden was working with the CIA and, and Saudi Arabia back in the 90s. And then he went rogue. And then somehow our weapons are still ending up in their hands. And they're growing all over the Middle East, even though we have, like pinpoint accuracy with satellites and stuff. None of it made sense. But Trump overturning the $1 billion program in Syria, it helped for ISIS to be removed. And Syria is now more free than ever. Trump's not perfect. He's not pro-Syria or anything, but he helped Syria get free. So even that alone, to me, any other leader, Hillary Clinton, Obama, McCain, Romney, they never would have done that. So they would have went in the other direction and ramped up tension. So already, after the first 2 years, I don't expect Trump to cure every disease in the world and stop every war. It's not physically possible as one person. It sounds great, like, yeah, cut the weapons and stop dealing with Saudi Arabia. It's just not going to work. Like, no matter, I know left-leaning people will lie to you, anti-war purists like Rand Paul will say that, and he should say that. He's in Congress, he should push for the truth, but I just don't see it as an overall solution, whereas I do think that Trump is making some moves, and with this, in his credit, after I've critiqued him a little, I think he's being very cautious because he knows it's not just Saudi Arabia who are bad actors. Iran are bad actors. Turkey's bad actors. Merkel and Macron from France are bad actors. Parts of Israel are bad actors. There's a lot of stuff going on. But I heard the Israel thing too. It's like Israel, a lot of people want to kill Israel too. So it's like it's a hard thing to balance. I'm not saying they're perfect. I know I'm sure there's some people here who are super pro-Israel and they don't want me to say anything. And I'm sure there's people here who are super anti-Israel. So I never talk about Israel and stuff because I don't know that much about it, and people freak out at me, and it's not my battle. But it's like, it's easy for people to say stop doing that when you have a bunch of people that are literally trying to kill you. It's a dangerous world. Like Donald Trump said, it's a very dangerous world, and every move needs to be taken cautiously and carefully, but also, pulling out completely or stopping something, it doesn't have this amazing effect. I just want to give you another example of a possibility. I'm just throwing it all out there so you can make your own decision. Say we stop dealing with Saudi Arabia and then the petrodollar collapses. In theory, it's like, yay, we stopped selling weapons to Saudi Arabia so they could stop funding proxy wars with Iran and Russia and all this stuff. But then if our economy collapses and our petrodollar collapses, then we might have poverty and homelessness and literally like a war in our own country based on the fact that our economy came to a closing halt because we're not selling trillions of dollars of weapons and oil with countries and transactions with Saudi Arabia. That's a possibility where it's like, yeah, we're going to stop dealing with them, but then the whole petrodollar collapses and our whole country goes to shit. No one wants to talk about that, but that's a possibility. The stock market's already crashing. Why is the stock market crashing? Because the entire United States system is a fiat currency, which means it's based on things that aren't really there. It's a indebted system. Like, if you've noticed, I've been not like any other Trump supporter or Republican, because one, I'm not really Republican, and I mean, yeah, I support Trump because I like him more than most people, but I'm not like a fanatical like liar. I'll call it like it is. You barely ever heard me talk about how great the stock market was because, one, I don't own stocks, so that's not my money going up. It's rich people. It's not my money. And two, I know that this is a fiat-based debt system, so it's going to crash eventually. And it's not going to be Donald Trump's fault. The news is going to act like Donald Trump's fault. Obama's going to say it's Trump's fault. Trump's going to say it's Obama's fault. I'm not playing in the circus. I know it's going to crash. I mean, I'm hopefully, save up or deal with it. But it's like the whole system is made to literally crash. You can't not crash when you're trillions of dollars in debt. This is not a system where you give there and then they take and then you give there and then they take and it all equals zero. It equals negative $22 trillion or something because the whole system is based on that. If you want to see a good movie, go watch The Big Short. I can't believe that big. I actually saw a screening of it. My friend is friends with one of the guys who runs the movie studio. I'm not saying I'm like in on the movie studio. I just a friend of a friend. I got to watch The Big Short at its premiere. I had no idea what it's about. I was blown away. I was like, what? A major movie studio is doing a movie about this? The Big Short was featuring Steve Carell, Christian Bale, Brad Pitt. It's explaining exactly how the U.S. economy works and how the bankers purposely made the economy crash. It's not a mistake that it crashes. They set it up to do that because they do that. They sell you fake loans and all these credit cards. And then, I don't even own a credit card. I know it's probably foolish. Don't listen to me. I'm not like a financial expert by any means. I'm the opposite. But I don't use credit cards because it's money I don't own. I don't want to be in debt. So it's like, yeah, no, credit cards are normal. They don't make sense to me. And I know, like I said, I know like millionaires who've made money off credit. So I'm not a genius, but everyone's in debt. The whole country's in debt. It's going to collapse. So yeah, it's like you could listen to a Republican NPC. I'm not to make fun of people, but oh yeah, the economy's so great, and oh man, Trump's so good. It's like, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I'm low unemployment. That's amazing. I think he's doing an amazing job with the economy. I really do think he's doing a great job, but at the end of the day, he's not going to be able to make the stock market go up forever because this whole system is built to continuously collapse. And the last time it collapsed, people ran away with billions, if not trillions of dollars, and not a single person went to jail. It's in the movie The Big Short. You could watch it. So it's like, why would they not do it again? The whole system's made to do that. And the last time they did it and got away with billions of dollars, no one got held accountable. It's just like Saudi Arabia. They don't get held accountable. If you have money in this world, I could lie to you and say, ooh, hold Saudi Arabia accountable. Trust me, if I was the judge of the world, I would do the best job I could to make sure everything was just. And I think in America, we have like a decent system. It's not perfect. It's far from it. But it's better here than it is in Saudi Arabia. It's better here than it is in Turkey, probably. It's better here than it is in Iran. So I'm very, very grateful for the United States of America. It's definitely not perfect, but we got somewhat of a system. And I personally think that a lot of people are wanting it to collapse because they're like, oh, I hate America so much. We're so bad. It's like, yeah and no, but you can't collapse what we have because then we're really going to find out what bad is. But overall, that's what happens on a world scale. Saudi Arabia, Iran, everyone just does crazy stuff. The United States system's based on debt. And, things are happening. But the reason I talked about that is because I was talking about the petrodollar and what it would be like not dealing with Saudi Arabia. And trust me, I do, at the core of my heart, I'm sure I'll get heat from this. I can't stand talking about this stuff because, to be honest, people sometimes threaten me or yell at me when I talk about stuff like this because they're so invested in the lie of the story that they believe that's not even true that, they have to threaten me or make me feel bad for telling the truth about it because they want to believe one narrative that's totally fake. So I don't even like talking about this stuff. But overall, that's how I feel. That's probably more honest than anyone else is going to tell you. And overall, I do, from the core of my heart and soul, I do believe Trump has America's interest at heart. I think I agree with him wholeheartedly. I don't know that I agree with John Bolton or his strategy completely, but I don't know all the details. And I'm honest enough to know that I don't know all the details about Iran and Turkey and all these groups and organizations that are working against us, including people within our own country. But I do think that Trump has America's interests first. And for that, I appreciate it because I don't think Obama... I mean, it's clear. You listen to Obama, Barack, and Michelle. No disrespect. They're allowed to have their opinion and perspective. But they don't like America. They will outwardly say it. You can watch Obama's college speech. The whole speech was about how he hates America. He's not even remotely grateful for this country. Like me, I tell you all the problems, and I say, I'm grateful to be here. Obama hates America. Michelle Obama hates America. So I don't think they had America's interests first. I don't think the Clintons or the Bushes had America's interests first. I think they had their family and their money interests first. So I am very happy, and I don't care who disagrees, I am happy that we have a president in this crazy world that has America's interests first. I'm not a selfish person, but if you want to change the world, you have to change yourself. If you want to help the world, you have to help yourself. If you want to make the world safe, the world can never be safe if you're not safe. So if you're the president of the United States, his agenda is the United States. So he's not going to do everything politically correct. He's not going to be able to stop Iran from putting, wrapping cloths around women's heads and not letting them drive or go to soccer games. He's not going to stop Saudi Arabia from killing journalists and killing their own people and literally enslaving people. I'm not saying they're enslaving people, but probably, overall, Trump can't fix that. He's not going to stop Saudi Arabia and Turkey from killing each other. They've been killing each other for hundreds of years, and they're going to continuously kill each other because they're very extreme people with ridiculous ideologies that wouldn't fly in the United States, which makes it ridiculously ironic and backwards that liberals in the United States have allied with far radical Islam in the Middle East, because it's literally the opposite of liberal feminism. It's more radical than Christianity or anything that, liberals hate in America. So it makes no sense. But for some reason, that's their biggest ally. It's yeah, we love them. We're not going to be able to stop them. Trump's not going to be able to stop them. He's going to do what he can. I think he did a good job in North Korea. I think he did a good job in Syria. I pray, and honestly, if anyone's going to fix Israel and Palestine, it's going to be Trump, man. Trump knows what's going on. Trump can't stop Israel. Trump can't stop Palestine. But I do think he's a good guy. I think you could disagree, but that's your opinion. I think he has America's interests first, and that's what you have to have. Because if you can't control Saudi Arabia, Israel, Turkey, Hezbollah, Iran, all these people, what you can control is your country, and you can make the best decisions knowing all the chess pieces to make sure that your country is as safe and secure and powerful as possible, and that's literally his job. So I really like his quote. Just to wrap it up, he said, "I will consider whatever ideas are presented to me, but if they're not consistent with the absolute security and safety of America," end quote, it's not going to fly. So I love America. Rand Paul could say his piece. Leftists can say their piece. Right-wing people can say their things on loop all the time, the same 5 phrases, and act like woke and get, $100,000 a month. Meanwhile, I'm scrapping for pennies telling the truth. It's okay. I'm not mad or salty. I'm just being honest. It's all the Republican NPCs, they just say, oh, the economy's high. And it's people put $1 million in their GoFundMe. Meanwhile, the whole fiat system is based on debt, and it's going to collapse whether Trump wants to or not, or the Republicans. And you got the left. But overall, all jokes and truth aside, that's my thoughts on Jamal Khashoggi, excuse me. I made him more American with James. Jamal Khashoggi, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Trump, hit what he said, the whole situation. That's my very long-winded, but, as multi-layered as possible take on it. God bless you. God bless America. God bless Saudi Arabia. God bless Turkey. God bless Iran. God bless Israel. God bless Syria. God bless Christians. God bless Muslims. God bless atheists and whatever other weirdo religion you have. No, I'm just kidding. God bless everyone. I really do pray for this world because I can't control war. I know people will get mad at me and yell at me in the messages, but believe it or not, I don't control the world's economy. I'm not the Rothschilds. I don't control the weather. I don't control the financial system or the wars. I simply can just do the best of my ability to try to weigh in on all options. And on that, I really do pray for the world, because it is a very dangerous and crazy world. And I don't think anyone else will probably go that multi-layered and give you all angles, with their perspective taken out of it. So thank you guys again. I appreciate you. Thank you guys for signing up to my free email list. Thank you guys for subscribing on YouTube. Thanks for watching on Facebook as always. Thank you guys for sharing all my other weirdo, funny videos. And thank you for supporting on Patreon or Donor Box. I really do appreciate that. If you don't want to, or some people are like, Anomaly, I don't have money till next month. If it's that serious, don't ever give me money. It's not that big of a deal. People are I feel terrible when people email me and they're like, oh, I don't have it. No, I'm not saying that, but I do really appreciate people who are on Patreon and Donor Box, because that's the only reason I'm able to be here this persistently. And also, I'm just keeping it real. People like myself of my stature, like Jimmy Dore and Kyle Kalinske, maybe they're a little bigger, maybe not, But you know, they're getting like $10,000-$15,000 a month, more, maybe $20,000-$30,000 a month. So they're I'm not saying I need all this money, like I'm not a power hungry fiend or anything, but if you really dislike the far left radical agenda that's becoming academia, music, TV, everywhere that you look, I'm one of the only people that can like successfully counter that. They're out earning me like 15 to 1, 10 to 1. And I'm, like I said, I'm not power hungry or anything, but it does help when people support, and the left and the far left, they definitely support. I mean, you could look at Beto O'Rourke. He raised like $70 million. I don't obviously need that much. And even people on the right, I'm not knocking anybody, but it's like not a lot of people do what I do, but they raise a lot of money to just say the same things on loop. And I'm not disrespecting that. I'm just being honest. I'm going to throw that out there. So thank you guys so much for supporting. I appreciate you listening. Have a good week. I'll be back later this week. Mark said, I don't have money, but I'm happy. That's fine, my brother. That's what I'm saying. I'm blessed. So, and don't, it's a suggestion, not a whatever it's called. I just want enough so I don't have to end up on the street and become the homeless person that I complained about. You know, that would be a very tragic end to my career. All right. Thank you guys. Have a good night.